welcome to what we are currently calling the RYLACast, because we haven't come up with a better name quite yet. So if you have... That's a great way to start a podcast, right? Is just to say, we don't love this title.
Yes.
Okay. This is the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810. I'm Greg Tepper. That is the one they call Josie, Andrew Utz, who we will henceforth refer to as Josie. Hello, Josie.
Hello, Greg. How are you?
I'm excellent. This is a brave new world for us. We're launching the podcast.
Yes, it is. And to go along with your, that's how you start a podcast, I feel like that's how every podcast starts. You have a couple episodes of, hey, let us know what the title should be.
Is that I don't listen to a ton of non-professionally produced podcasts, if that's haughty enough. I don't know how podcasts, because I know that everyone has a podcast now, which is why we are going to have a podcast.
Correct.
But so it's a feeling out process in the early going.
That's my experience. Is like one or two episodes is a feeling out process, or at least the image of a feeling out process. Okay. I don't know if it's for show.
I like it. So, you're probably wondering what the heck this is. This is episode 1 of what we're calling the RYLACast for now. If you've got a better name, let us know. But in any case, you're probably thinking, well, why would we do this? What the heck is this going to be about? And I think that's a fair question. We are going to, hopefully this is going to be a bit of an extension of what RYLA is all about. This is an audio companion piece, I think, to RYLA.
It's an excellent way to put it.
Yeah, do you like that?
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking about that on the way over here. I was like, how can we describe exactly what this podcast is? And I think that's it. An
audio companion piece.
Yeah.
Of leadership.
Yes. So we hope that you're going to get a little bit of leadership, thoughts, some kind of personal growth type things, the things that you come to RYLA for. And if you are, I would say almost everybody listening to this is going to be an alumnus or somebody who's otherwise involved with the program. But if for some reason you're not, and you have stumbled upon this random podcast, or you just typed in 4 random letters into Google, welcome.
Yes, and please spread the word.
Yes, please, by all means. I think this is going up on iTunes. You're the technical wizard over there. So.
Yeah, we'll be up on iTunes and Google Play to start out with.
So give us a review, a rating. So each podcast is going to have 3 different segments. The first segment is going to be something because I think the things that we all come to expect from a RYLA experience. Something to think about, someone to talk to, and something to leave you with. And so those are the 3 things that we're going to hope to accomplish in every one of these episodes. We are going to start with something to think about. And this is, by the way, if you have articles that you've read or things that you're really passionate about, by all means, let us know. Josie's on Twitter, so tweet Josie.
Yeah, tweet me at RYLA5810.
Oh!
We can go with the official RYLA5810 Twitter handle.
I thought you were just going to plug your personal Twitter. That would have been even better.
If this blows up, I'll plug my SoundCloud.
That is what you need to do. Yes, absolutely. I don't even understand SoundCloud. Does that make me an old?
No.
Okay, good. So. First and foremost, we're gonna talk about something to think about. I'm going to ask you a question, Josie, but you are just simply an avatar for everybody listening.
Okay.
I want you to think about who is your favorite president. Okay, think about who your favorite United States president is. It can be because it's someone you admire. It can be because it's somebody that you think is very cool. It's because somebody is interesting, somebody that it inspires you. Are you thinking of a president?
I'm thinking of a president.
Okay, you're thinking of a president. Here's who you're not thinking of. Okay?
Okay.
You're not thinking of James Buchanan. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. By the way, play along at home. Think of your own favorite president. Nobody's thinking of James Buchanan, because James Buchanan is kind of consensus the worst president in American history.
Okay.
You're also not thinking of Warren G. Harding, who is probably the second worst president in American history. Right?
That is correct.
Think that's fair? Okay. You're also not thinking of kind of this wide array of the anonymous presidents, right? You're not thinking of Chester A. Arthur. You're not thinking of James Garfield.
That's correct.
You're not thinking of Rutherford B. Hayes.
No.
You're probably not thinking even of Zachary Taylor.
I am not.
Right. Exactly. Generally speaking, when you ask people who their favorite president is, it comes back to they play the hits, right?
Right.
So, I'm going to see if I can carve it out. Is it George Washington?
It is not George Washington.
All right. Is it Abraham Lincoln? We did not rehearse this, by the way. This is actually live.
We did not rehearse this, and can I think I'm going to change my answer.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Okay, but it's still no to the previous one.
Okay. Is it TJ? Thomas Jefferson?
No, it is not.
Okay, who's your favorite president?
Grover Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland.
Yep.
Interesting. First, the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. The only president to get married in office. A lot of interesting things about Grover Cleveland. Why Grover Cleveland?
Well, definitely for the reasons you just listed.
Mm-hmm.
Also for the name Grover.
Sure.
And Cleveland.
Sure. Okay, I'm with you. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th president of the United States. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit, if I may, about my favorite president. My favorite president, and I think I'm kind of alone on this hill, my favorite president is William Howard Taft.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's the thing about William Howard Taft. What do you know about William Howard Taft? Here we go.
This is embarrassing.
Here comes the slander.
If I even know or don't know, but I feel like he was a jolly fellow.
By jolly, do you mean large?
I mean large.
You mean he got stuck in a bathtub once?
Yes,
right.
That's what I mean.
That's what everybody thinks they know about William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft was a large fellow, but he actually was never stuck in a bathtub. That was a myth that was put out there by his political opponents to make fun of him. But William Howard Taft, I think, is arguably one of the greatest Americans who's ever lived. At least one of the most accomplished. And I think that there's a lot we can take from the story of William Howard Taft. He was born in Ohio. He's from Cincinnati, and he is a guy who grew up he was the son of a judge, and he grew up saying, "All right, I want to be, I want to be my number one goal in life. I want to be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I want to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court." So he goes to school. He studied at Cincinnati Law School. He went to Yale. He was a guy who brilliant. Everyone knew that he was brilliant. He's actually, I believe I read this right. I read a great book about him. That he is actually the youngest judge in Ohio State history ever. He was just, he named a judge someone was like 29. It was insane how young he was made a judge. Yes, absolutely. So he starts kind of getting into, to people say, well, we want you to start doing things beyond that. So he becomes Solicitor General. Okay, Solicitor General, kind of the one of the head cops, you know what I mean, head lawyers.
Okay.
Becomes a federal judge, but then he kind of bounced around and did a ton of weird things. Okay, so for example, he at one point was he was the Governor General of the Philippines.
Okay.
Yes, he was for 2 years. And then he was the provisional governor of Cuba for a small time. These are all true. But this is where this is where kind of things take a turn. Things get interesting. He did not want to get into politics. He was a guy. He's like, I want to follow the law. William Howard Taft says, I want to be a guy who is all about the law. I want to be a judge. I want to be Supreme Court, or Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And so Teddy Roosevelt, the wildly popular president, kind of noticed him and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I want you to come on board. I need smart people in my cabinet. I want you to come on board." And kind of out of a sense of duty, he did not want to do this because he didn't want to be a politician. He's like, "Okay, fine." So he became Secretary of War for Teddy Roosevelt from 1904 to 1908. So after Teddy Roosevelt decides he doesn't want to be president anymore, basically, he was still he was the most popular man in America. Teddy Roosevelt was at the time, which is kind of crazy to think about, a president being wildly popular. You know what I mean?
Right.
Regardless of who the president is, he was the most popular guy in the world. And so he goes and he basically, whoever Teddy Roosevelt taps to be the next president of the United States is going to win.
Okay.
It is the gold-plated lock of the week. He is going to be the next president. And so he goes to Taft. He goes, I want you to be my successor. And William Howard Taft did not want to be president, basically. In many ways he didn't, but kind of out of a sense of duty, kind of out of a sense of obligation, he said, okay, I'm going to go be president. So he goes and he runs for president and he wins, running away like everybody could have possibly seen coming. And so he serves president, and honestly, as a president, he was fine. Just kind of a guy. If you ask historians, he's kind of smack dab in the middle of all the presidents. He actually had a bit of a falling out with Teddy Roosevelt, and there's a long story, but that goes into that. But the bottom line of it is that I think there's a lot that we can learn from William Howard Taft. You look at things like, okay, a sense of duty, a sense of a higher calling, doing something bigger than yourself. I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. And all of these things, I think there's something to be said for that you have your own plans, but then you get pulled in different directions, and being nimble, kind of in your own way, in your own career. I think in a lot of ways. I think that's a lesson we can learn from him. I also think that there's a lesson to be learned in kind of letting other people define you. I think he's kind of a tragic figure in that regard, because we were talking at the very beginning. What do you know him for? You know him because he got stuck in a bathtub. That didn't happen. He was a large fella, but in a lot of ways, he kind of let other people define him, whether it was that he wasn't Teddy Roosevelt or that he got stuck in a bathtub in the president. But here's the thing that I think is great about William Howard Taft, and why I think he's one of the great Americans. Do you know what he did after he was president?
Did he retire?
He did retire. But then do you know what happened?
Stepped away.
He went to Yale, and he taught for a little bit.
Oh.
And then after that, he became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? He's the only man to ever be president and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And so you want to talk about a sense of duty and a sense of service. But more importantly, and I think that this is something that we hear a lot at camp from campers, is having a plan and saying, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, this is who I want to be. This is how I want to. This is how I perceive my life going forward. There are going to be twists and turns. Like you're not like there is not a straight path to your goals. It's going to be a winding road. But I think that what's interesting and what we can kind of take from this lesson, why I've always kind of admired him, is that he kind of kept his eye on the prize. That he had a goal, and through it all, and through all of these things that he didn't necessarily see coming, in the end, he's a guy who achieved his dream. It did not have the path that he thought it was going to. But I really admire William Howard Taft because of that. That's why he's my favorite president.
Well, thank you.
Do you like that?
I really like that, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
This is a presidential history podcast now. That's what this is going to be. Every week, we're just going to do a new president. Next week, tune in for Calvin Coolidge. All right, so that is our something to think about. Let's move on to something to talk about, or someone to talk to, rather. And we're going to be bringing in a number of guests. Some names you know, maybe some names you don't. But our first guest, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and let's open up that door. It's a big, oversized, comically large door. Boy, why do we need a door that large? And here he comes, our first guest on episode 1 of the RYLACast. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Josias! Yeah!
Well, hello. I just stepped in here.
Welcome.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Well, we had to clear a space for you.
Yes.
So here you are. We figure you're an excellent first guest for this because you're obviously a mainstay in the RYLA program, I would say, and somebody that I think people know but maybe have not heard your whole story and what you're all about. So I guess first and foremost, and we'll probably start every one of these like this, I want to hear your RYLA story. I want to hear how you came to camp, how you've been involved, how you've stayed involved.
Okay. Well, my RYLA story started in 2006. Mm-hmm. I was at Jesuit College Preparatory School. I always just say Jesuit College Prep because I never know how to say that word.
Yeah, I thought it was preparatory.
It's probably preparatory. Good thing this isn't recorded.
Do people even say that? Like do they say preparatory? Or for example, I'm here in the DFW. We're all here in the DFW Metroplex. I just call it Jesuit.
Yeah, I just call it Jesuit.
Okay, cool. But anyway, go on.
And I was in the Interact Club at Jesuit. When I was there, you had to join a service organization, and I can't remember all 4. One of them was the Interact Club, and that piqued my interest. And I sat in one meeting. And they played the RYLA video. And they had the previous year's attendee come in and tell us all about camp and how you were going to have calisthenics at 6 a.m. and you were going to be really tired, and it was going to be a lot of fun.
What a sales job.
What a sales job. And so with that knowledge, I filled out an application and I went against 2 other juniors for 2 spots. So 3 students, 2 spots. And in the interview process, I interviewed the Addison Midday Rotary Club, was responsible for Jesuit. And if those who are playing the RYLA 5810 bingo card, that is Jim Duffy's club.
All right, I'm writing down RYLA podcast bingo card. Okay, go on.
So Jim Duffy was in there interviewing, as well as Chris Kellen, and they, at the end of the deliberation, they ended up adding a 3rd spot to send all 3 students.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was knowing what I know now, that's a big deal. They don't just hand out additional spots for juniors. So went to camp in 2006, finished camp, and decided that I wanted to be an assistant counselor. I wanted to come back as an AC. So filled out the application at the end of camp, and for whatever reason, mine went through. And so I came back in 2007 as an AC, and now it's 2019, and they're still allowing me to fill out applications and come back.
So I'm interested from, of all the ways that you have been involved in the program, because obviously you were a counselor, or you were a camper, and then an AC. You've been kind of a mainstay on staff for a while. How many different roles kind of have you held in the RYLA organization?
There have been a couple. An AC, I was a counselor for a year. And then kind of since it's opening day, I will use the term a utility player.
We're recording this on March 28th, if we can just suspend time and space.
Right. Sorry for...
Yeah, we just, it's fine.
I was
you were just ruining the illusion. That's fine. Go for it, Josie.
Coming into baseball season, we'll edit that part out. A utility player of sorts. And as far as specific roles, alumni staff, support staff, I've tried to find my position on the crew, but it's only as a volunteer basis now. I think they're still vetting me out. And then working the sound and entertainment equipment, if that's a job.
It is. I'm sorry, have you been to camp? Yes, it's a job.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. That's good. So then now let's kind of spin this forward, and I want to get back to other things in a minute. But why? Like, why keep coming back? Why you're a guy who obviously you're committing to doing this podcast. You're committing to doing this podcast, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
You're committed to do this podcast. You've spent time and energy and thought on all of these RYLA activities. Why? What keeps you coming back?
Yeah, and that's it. All for me, it all goes back to 2006. That the feeling of there's no place like, I'm going to use Camp Hoblitzell because that's where RYLA is held, but it's really wherever camp is held. There's no place like that provides a support net for 180 some odd strange high school juniors.
Tough but fair.
It's such a positive environment, and I try to come back and give that same environment that I experienced as a camper, because that camp in 2006 has impacted my life in so many ways. One very important way we can get to, I guess, later.
Let's go. No, we can go and get to it if you want. Unless if you want to finish that thought.
Well, yeah. So I guess to finish the thought. So that's why I keep coming back is the people. The people that make up the RYLA staff, alumni, support staff, counselors, Rotarians especially, are just they provide a positive. I'm rambling now.
No, you're not.
a positive impact and area for high school juniors to excel in a critical time of. It was a critical time of my life when I was a high school junior, so I can assume that has still remained the same. And that's why I keep coming back, is to provide that same level of support.
So what do you do now? You're a gonna do very heavy air quotes. You're an adult. What do you do? What's your life?
Yeah, I'm an adult.
You said that like it was your job. Like you're filling out your taxes. It says occupation. You go adult.
I'd check other and scribble adult in there. Yes, I work as a civil engineer at a, to use big words, multinational engineering design firm.
Okay, I just glazed over. Can you explain that to me like I'm 5?
Yes, I design railroads.
I know the choo-choo.
You know a choo-choo.
I know the choo-choo.
Yep.
It's good. Okay, so that's very interesting. So then how do you use the lessons that you learned those years ago and that you still learn coming back as staff? How do you use those kind of as a in your everyday life now?
Yeah. So one of the main lessons I use every day is the communication style. That you are going to a camp, you encounter tons of different individuals and different leadership styles, and you have to roll with the punches. In my job, there's a lot of design work that's iterative. It goes back and forth, and what I think is good and cool and will work, someone else who may be higher or lower on the totem pole thinks differently. And you just have to really put personal positions and thoughts aside and what's best for the client and the project itself. So in the communication style of what's utilitarian, what's good for the greatest number.
Right.
And so that's one of the main things that I say I would use every day.
Interesting. Now, we've teased it, we've talked about it, but there is another legacy of your RYLA experience, and that is that we both shared a golf cart at camp.
That is.
And that was awesome. It was Prestige Worldwide. Myself, you, me, and Brett Scroggins. And that was great. And that's the legacy of RYLA in Josie Utz's life. Josie Utz!
That's it.
Okay, fine. No, we should probably address I'm not going to say what I was going to say because that would be extremely insulting now that I think about it. Let's address the thing that is going. I don't know how I'm going to say this because there's definitely a turn of phrase I want to use, and I don't want to use that. Let's just talk about your wife.
Yes. So,
boy, just dancing around rakes.
Yeah. Yes. My part of my RYLA legacy is I am married to a fellow RYLArian.
Audible gasp.
And so in essence, I'm living RYLA every day.
Mm-hmm.
And
so who's this?
Joni Rowland.
Okay.
Now, it's a mental block that I have in my head. I've always known her as Joni Rowland, but she's legally Joni Utz now. Mm-hmm. And so every time I say Joni Rowland, she gives me a look like, well, we dumped that name.
So full disclosure, she's sitting in the studio, and she just gave you the look. I've seen the look. It's a good look.
Yeah.
It's a good look. It's a strong look. Okay. And so obviously that's a different spin on a RYLA experience.
It is.
That's something that not a lot of people. There's a couple.
Yeah.
Becca Egger and Jeff Egger, I believe. If I may just name drop people, but that's obviously something that maintains a legacy in your life.
Yeah, and we'll name drop, not to leave out Katie and John Huber.
Thank you
as well. But yeah, it's and full disclosure, for those listening who haven't been to camp, it did not happen at camp. This was it started after we were on staff. So we focused on leadership the week of camp.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as an impact, it's it's nice not to have to explain this part of my life to someone that's not familiar with it.
Yeah, because I've had to do that with my wife.
Right.
Because my wife and we'll tell my story at some undisclosed time and date, but that's something I've had to kind of explain to her is like how important this program is to me and why I want to devote time and energy to it. And she's cool with it. Shout out to you, Jen. She's cool with it, but like I feel like that's there's an unspoken thing between you two that you don't have to address.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that also we kind of it's a 2-for-1. Also, we feel like is volunteering. Mm-hmm. We don't have to when Dr. Dana Mackison calls. It's understood. Oh, yep, we got to take that,
Mm-hmm.
and this is something important, which it always is.
It always is.
But that's
okay.
Yeah,
that's great. So. Well, you'll get to talk a lot more on this podcast because you're the co-host of this podcast. So I won't drag every last detail out of you. But I think that's really interesting. Is that you obviously have a unique RYLA perspective that it's given you a lot, and I don't know. That's something that's really cool. Also, do you want to explain the fact that your name is Andrew, but nobody calls you Andrew?
Yes.
It's extremely confusing to my wife.
It's very confusing to me, actually. I mean, I don't know. It's gotten to the point where I don't know how to sign emails, RYLA emails.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, I emailed you, and your email address has Andrew in it, and I was like, oh yeah. I kept typing like Josie into Gmail, and it wasn't coming up.
I know. But yeah, so when I came back to camp in 2007 as an AC, I'm sorry. Let me back up. I'm already...
Rewind.
My AC as a camper was... The girls' cabin AC was Lindsay Marzette.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to camp as an AC, she was on staff.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote everyone that had come back as an AC or ACA a letter saying, basically what an honor it was to come back to camp. And that meant a lot to me at the time. And so she and I ended up staying on staff for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was 2008 where she just looked at me and said, I don't like the name Andrew. And I was like, well,
it was kind of a birthday gift.
It's kind of the deal.
Yeah.
And
that's what the government calls me.
Right. And she looked at me and said, I'm going to call you Josie. And I wasn't going to argue with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, you know what? It's one person. What harm could that do?
Oh, God.
Which let that be a lesson on the leadership podcast that all it takes is one person.
You are a walking example of the slippery slope.
That's right. And so it took a couple years to take off, but now I am Josie.
Yeah, it's like you're in my phone as Josie. I only know you as Josie.
Yeah,
and yet there's like 5% of times when I have to like think of you as Andrew. And my wife, I think because your wife's name is Joni, it's Joni and Josie, and there are times she cannot keep straight. She's like, okay, his name is Josie? Is that right? It's like, yes, honey. It's not that complicated. But then again, we also shared a special golf cart, so
that is true.
Very special. Okay. Josie, thank you for being our someone to talk to.
Well, thank you for interviewing me.
Okay. So now we're on to our final segment, something to leave you with. Hopefully something that you will, this can be a homework assignment. This can be something for you to think about after this podcast terminates here at the end of the show. And here with something to leave you with is Josie.
Well, yes. Thank you, Greg. So something...
You dropped into NPR voice there for a second. You're like, thank you very much.
I'm in podcast mode. I'm still trying to find my radio voice. Something to leave you with. I was making some notes as you were talking about the first, with just something to think about, the first segment. And I wrote down higher calling, own plans, but also being nimble, and Chief Justice.
That's a lot of words. It's
a lot of words. So I'd like to leave the listeners with the thought of what your own goals are, and do kind of an introspective thing of, if you're campers or if you're on staff, think about your own personal RYLA journey and how that's meshed and coupled with your personal journey, both in the office and out of the office. And see if you can be like Taft and do you still have your eye on the prize, or have you gotten pulled in a couple different directions? And there's nothing wrong with getting pulled in a couple different directions, as long as it's what you want to do. And I know that's a slippery slope of, how far do you avoid your own personal plans? But that's what I want to leave people with is, just think about how you've been nimble on a positive note. How you've been nimble and how you've been able to impact others' lives with what you've been able to do in a positive light, either through camp or outside of camp. Really interested in the outside of camp part, actually, because that's something I think I'd like to get to in subsequent episodes. Is camp is really insulated by design, and so outside of camp, how have you learned those lessons when you're not in front of a microphone talking about camp?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so that's what I'd like to leave you with.
And now we've got to try to do an awkward dismount of this podcast for the first time without rehearsing. Okay, that is going to do it for episode 1 of the RYLACast. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. We hope you enjoyed it. What's the website they need to go to for RYLA stuff?
The website is, and let me see, www.ryla5810alumni.com.
.org.
.org.
I'm looking at this.
Thank you.
.org.
Sorry, .org.
RYLA5810alumni.org is where you can go. That's, I believe, where this podcast is going to be hosted, but you can also download it on podcast. Please rate us and subscribe. Josie, thank you for your courage. Let's do it again next week.
Sounds good, Greg.
We'll see you next time on the RYLAcast.